Every artisan dreams of a studio, a room of her own where dye pots can simmer, where mordants and tannins can steep undisturbed overnight. A place where everything is close to hand and there is storage space enough for cloth, dyes, yarns, supplies, and tools. But more than all this, a studio is a place that, as soon as you walk into it, inspires you to begin your work. A studio can be a creative project on its own, but it always has the goal to be the place where something happens. It is a special place dedicated to making. So you may just want to set up a studio. And this studio can be as small as a table, the corner of a basement or a spot on the back porch. It can be a dedicated room or a cleared out shed. It can be a covered patch in the garden, a garage, or even a dedicated, purpose-built studio. In this module, we're going to consider what that studio might look like, how to make it safe, and most important of all, how to make it into the space you want to use again and again to explore color. There are some things you're going to need in any studio, no matter what the size. Pots. As you can see, we love pots, and we particularly love stainless steel pots. If you want to work with both cellulose and protein, stainless steel is highly recommended. Stainless steel is the most neutral metal. That is, it will not react with whatever is in the pot. It can handle both alkaline and acid environments well. All other metal pots tend to interact with mordants and dyes. Aluminum, copper, and iron are all used in dyeing. So if your pot is made from one of these metals, you need to understand how it will change your colors. Copper tends to brighten colors, especially madder reds. Iron will sadden or darken colors. It is very, very difficult to completely clean a pot once it's been used for an iron mordant or modifier. So save yourself the trouble and simply choose one pot and dedicate it to iron. Clearly label it. A cast iron pot, if you have one, is a logical choice. Aluminum is fine if you want to work with protein fibers, wools and silks, but an aluminum pot is problematic for a tannin bath, and a tannin bath is necessary for cellulose fibers. Enameled pots may be used if they're in very good shape. Often enamelware has an iron base which will rust once it's chipped. This will definitely affect your dyeing, and not in a good way. We like heavy gauge pots so that we can put them on a full flame without scorching the fibers. Thin pots can have hot spots, and this can be a problem. Cheap pots are seldom worth buying. Once you factor in the cost of your materials, your dyes, mordants, cloth, or yarns, and most importantly your time, a cheap pot that ruins even one project is not worth the trouble of bringing it home. For processes that don't require heat, you can use plastic. Beautiful pots that are not suitable for dyeing are still quite useful for storage and perhaps for photographing your projects. Utensils such as spoons, strainers, sieves, measuring spoons, and bowls should all be in good shape and rust-free. Stainless steel is the best material for these items. All pots and utensils used for dyeing must not be used for preparing or cooking food. Store dye pots and tools in a separate place and clearly label them. You will need a scale. A digital kitchen scale works great. Let's talk about water. Water is heavy. You'll need to either locate your studio near your water source or run a line to where you want to work. In my in-depth natural dye workshop, I give a number of approaches that are specifically designed to conserve water. These involve one-pot processes and reusing mordant and tannin baths. I also give the best approach to purify wastewater so that it may be used directly for watering gardens. Drainage is almost as important as the water source. Don't forget that cloth and yarns can shed considerable lint over time. Make sure that you have easy access to the U-bend of your sink or drain. Get comfortable taking this apart and putting it back together again. Additional drain guards will mean you don't have to clean the U-bend so often. Finally, no matter where you live, your water will have its own character. This is often due to dissolved minerals that can affect your dyeing. This is especially true if you're on a rural water system or well water. The most important minerals for you to be aware of are calcium and iron. In high enough quantities, these dissolved minerals will make it very difficult to get true, clear colors. Heat. If you live in a hot climate, there are recipes and techniques which work well in your ambient outside temperature. This means you may not need fuel and burners, but the process will take longer. But if you live in a temperate region, you will need to consider a source of heat. This can be an electric element, an induction element, a butane stove, a natural gas stove, or a propane burner. Usually propane can only be used outside. Burners should not be placed directly on wood or plastic surfaces. We use kitchen cutting boards as insulators. We also use glass mulling slabs. Depending on what you're dyeing, you will either have your heat source and therefore your pots on the ground or on a table. When we are doing all our Mordanton dye recipe testing, we work with yarns or fabrics that weigh between 100 grams and 500 grams and pots between 8 liters and 20 liters. For this, we always work on a table. When we're working with large amounts of yarn or larger pieces of fabric, we place our heat source on the ground and we work with larger 50-liter or 75-liter pots. If you're considering a production setup, do some ergonomic tests to see what height works best for you, the size of your dye pots, and the type of material you will be dyeing. Any studio will need a work surface. Here are some ways that we've made our tabletops more versatile and more useful for specific techniques. If you're working on a table that will be damaged by dyes and water, cover it with some 6mm poly. You can buy this as a roll in most hardware stores. To avoid putting a hot pot directly on the poly, or if you just don't like the feeling of working on plastic, put a layer of cloth over top of the 6mm poly. This cloth may itself become a beautiful statement after a few years of dyeing. For block printing, we add a layer of smooth carpet underfelt under a layer of canvas. You can stretch this over your table just as if you were stretching a canvas for painting. You can use a staple gun to fix it to the underside of the table. Air drying on a line is usually best. It saves you energy costs, it's easier on the environment, and will work for all processes. It takes time, though, and space. If you're looking to run a drying line, make sure it is out of direct sunlight. Drying lines can easily be set up inside the studio, making one space serve many functions. Temporary drying racks are a good space-saving solution, as are hanging racks. One genius solution for drying yarns and fabrics is a Spinex machine. We have one at the Maywa studio and we love it. In essence, it's the spin cycle of your washer in a smaller, highly efficient format. Make sure you get the one that is manufactured in Germany. You can easily dry 10 pounds of fabric at a time in it. Store fabrics and dyes in a cool, dark place. Depending on your local conditions, you also want to protect fibers from dampness, insects, and rodents. Keep everything clearly labeled. Keep dyes, mordants, tannins, and chemicals completely separate from items used for household cooking. Clearly label all containers and substances. Store dyes and chemicals separately and away from foods. Hazardous substances such as lye should be in a locked cabinet. Be mindful of pets and children. Store everything in a cool, dry place. You may dream of a permanent studio with rows of gas burners and huge industrial sinks. But our suggestion is to begin small. Slowly you will grow into and modify whatever space you use. Remember that flexibility is also a desirable quality. Sometimes a small setup gets much more use than a large one. Being able to move a small burner and a pot outside on a beautiful summer morning and fill it with a garden hose while you prep a project with friends is a great advantage. In the end, you want your studio to work for you. So let's wrap up with a few words about a very small apartment-sized studio. Let's assume you don't have a dedicated room. In this case, your goal will be a studio that can be set up and taken down. Your studio can be organized in a cabinet, a closet, or even a set of cardboard boxes. Remember that a studio packed in a set of containers is also portable. You can easily load it into your car for a day of working at a friend's house. A trick here is to use containers that organize your materials and tools, a separate box for a portable burner and pots, a separate one for dyes, tannins, and mordants, and a separate one for cloth and yarns. Use containers that are not so big that you cannot move them easily. As long as you can set up your studio and then pack it away again when your project is finished, any means of storage will work. And more importantly, any space can become a studio. Don't let a lack of space stop you. Become a tactical dyer, able to transform a space into a dye studio and back again in a single day. But no matter what your setup, large or small, make it your own. A place you can return to again and again. The kind of place you can't wait to get to in order to start your work.